least as an old and dear friend of mine, John Nichols. And I think many of you know that John is clearly one of the outstanding journalists in the United States of America. He is the Washington correspondent of The Nation magazine, as well as a contributing writer of The Progressive and In These Times. He has written many, many excellent books. His latest, co-authored with Robert McChesney, is called Dollarocracy: How the Money and Media Election Complex is Destroying America. John Nichols.
When the senator says be brief, you are brief. And everyone's been so good, so I won't break the pattern, but I will say thank you, Senator Sanders and Congressman Koch, for doing what members of Congress are supposed to do. A century ago, the great progressives who transformed this country from a very oligarchical, Gilded Age country to something that could put away for democracy, prided themselves not on their individual pieces of legislation, but on the constitutional amendments that they advanced. And it is important to understand that a century ago, the constitutional amendments they advanced provided women with the right to vote. They created a tax structure where you could tax corporations and the wealthy. And they also created an elected Senate, which is not a bad idea, because I'm not sure that Bernie Sanders...
Don't be about doubts about it.
Yeah, but I'm quite convinced that Bernie Sanders would never have been appointed to the Senate by the Vermont legislature. So I think the people had to do the job. And so the talk of constitutional amendments is appropriate within this chamber and within this House. But I do want to say one thing as regards this film. It focuses on the Koch brothers. And, but Tia would tell you, and Tia knows, and in fact the film brings out, that they are illustrative rather than definitive. If the Koch brothers did not exist, we would still have a crisis in this country as regards money and politics. So rather than to see this film as an assault on the Koch brothers per se, understand it as an assault on an expose of a crisis that is severe. And that's very important because the personalization of this, I recognize that is a part of how we talk about things. But we should never miss that it is the money that is the crisis. It is the dollar that trumps the vote that matters more than the individual spending that dollar. That said, I want to just take a minute to talk about zombies. Or more specifically, zombie ideas. And this is what the dollar does. In American politics, we bring issues up, we discuss them, we deal with them. And when people clearly reject an idea, it's dead, it's done with. We advance as a society. Unless there are people who pour so much money into the political process that they can animate dead ideas. And so, today in this building, zombie ideas walk among us. The proposals to undermine and assault Social Security, Medicare, and Medicaid. The American people have said they don't want to do that. We've had elections. They put Paul Ryan on the ticket, right? It was very clear. This was a good and a legitimate debate. Paul comes from my home state. I have good regard for him. The American people have signaled they don't like this idea. And the American people have signaled they like labor unions. Look at the polling. Labor unions do very, very well in an era of income inequality. People would like to be able to organize and get a fair wage. And yet, we have a constant assault in the states and nationally on labor unions. Climate change. The American people are quite comfortable with the fact that there's a problem there. And yet, denial of climate change walks among us. Zombie ideas have in fact defined our politics in recent years, rather than ideas that might move us forward, make us more functional as a republic. And so once we recognize that, we have to also ask ourselves if perhaps even zombie candidates in elections. And I don't want to be, I'm not going to pick on any individual person, but I will say that I live in the state of Wisconsin. Spent a lot of my time there. I saw 1 million Wisconsinites turn in petitions to have a recall election to remove a governor that they thought was assaulting their basic values. I have told the stories of democracy. I actually know when something's real and it's happening, and yet That process did not result in the recall of the governor. You say to yourself, well, how could 1 million people do this? How could you have this incredible grassroots event? How could you have grandmothers in Christmas sweaters doing this wonderful thing? All this stuff, and then it didn't come together. And then you realize, you look at the campaign spending reports, and in the final stages of that Wisconsin recall, it was a 7-to-1 ratio. 7-to-1 ratio, huge inflows of money from people in Texas and Arkansas. And the fact of the matter is, we need not deny it. Money buys election results, and money buys governance. And that is not democracy. That is Dollarocracy. And this is the critical element of it that we don't talk about enough. It works not because of money. It works because so much of our media has stood down. Our newspapers closing, laying off, not covering state capitals, not even covering Congress at critical stages, television and radio stations, massive layoffs. I mean, the fact of the matter is, we have less coverage of serious politics today than in the past. And as media stands down, and with Citizens United money flows in, you create an opening for very, very wealthy people not to contribute to the debate, but to define it. So that's what we talk about today, the simple question of democracy versus Dollarocracy. And the simple answer, which is that in a moment like this, we have to have films, we have to have documentaries, we have to have statements that go and take a serious look at the issue. Because we need to pause for our busy lives and pay attention to what's going on. And I have to tell you, I've seen Tia's film, it still brings tears to my eyes, because she didn't just tell a story of money and politics. She told the story of what zombie ideas